Life for Jews in Europe was becoming increasingly worse during the late 1800s. With pogroms happening all across Russia and rising anti Semitism, Jews began immigrating to Palestine, which began the first wave of immigration in 1882, known as the First Aliyah. Zionism was still in its early stages at this point and had not been clearly defined. The movement was not popular among Jews yet, and it had not settled on Palestine as a place for a Jewish state. Palestine at this time was still an isolated desert with a few scattered communities. Jewish life there was very different and very hard than life in Europe. There was no Kahal, however, which was an oligarchical rabbinical authority seen throughout Jewish communities in Europe, so it really gave these new immigrants a chance to start a new life. Compared to the first Aliyah, the second Aliyah brought younger, single adults. The second Aliyah also laid the foundation of labor Zionism, which focused on creating a national homeland in Palestine that was socialistic. Immigrants who were part of the second Aliyah also came from Eastern Europe and immigrated mostly because of the Kishinev pogrom in 1903 in Russia that left 47 people dead and over 400 people wounded. The labor Zionism movement was strong, and some of its leaders, like David Ben-Gurion and Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, were prominent figures in establishing the State of Israel in 1948. In its early years, Israel had been a more socialistic country, with its kibbutzim, pioneering youth movements, and heavy involvement of government in daily life. But as the years went on, Israel turned towards capitalism. Labor Zionism can still be seen throughout Israel, however, with the Labor Party and kibbutzim. In the mid-1900s, as Hitler was rising to power and the Nazi Party was taking over Germany, over 60,000 Jews had immigrated to Palestine as part of the transfer agreement between Germany and Palestine. Before the Holocaust, the Nazi Party encouraged Zionism and Jewish immigration because it meant less Jews inside of Germany. Soon, however, the Nazi Party would change their mind and limit all Jewish immigration. Britain also set quotas during this time, limiting the amount of Jews who could enter Palestine. Even with all these restrictions, thousands of Jews during and after the war were able to illegally enter Palestine. Between 1945 to 1948, Jews who tried immigrating to Israel were sent to detention camps in Cyprus, and only after the creation of Israel in 1948 were they allowed to come in. After the Holocaust, Jewish centers around the world had shifted drastically, and instead of Europe being the main center for Jewish life, America and Israel were quickly growing to be the new centers. Another smaller wave of immigration to Israel happened after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. No one living inside the USSR was allowed to immigrate to another country, and if they were, it was a long and expensive process. During the Cold War, America accepted anyone from the USSR as a refugee. But once the Soviet Union fell, America's quotas went back into effect, so Russian Jews were forced to go to Israel. Israel and America are now the countries with the most amount of Jews living in them, and as of next year, more Jews will be living in Israel than outside of Israel.